Hello everybody, my name is Benjamin Bloom. Welcome along. We're going to talk a little bit about the latest statement from the EFL and from the Premier League today. And if we get anybody in the chat, didn't advertise this, we'll do a little bit of Q&A about it. But we do have an update, as I say, from both the EFL and the Premier League today about what's going to be happening with the football going forward. We're still as kind of vague as ever with all of this, but we'll see what transpires. Obviously, it is very, very hard for anybody to say anything definite about anything at the moment, just because of the kind of undetermined nature about all of this. But we have, I've got the statement in front of me from the EFL as a result of the COVID-19. EFL, Premier League, FA, Barclays Women's Super League, FA Women's Championship today collectively agreed to postpone its football competitions until it is, quote, safe to resume. I think we all knew this was coming. Remember, their approach had been that first, it'll be April the 3rd or whatever when we're back, and then it'll be May when we're back. Now, quote, until it is safe to resume. Football is committed in supporting the government's efforts in tackling the outbreak. Staging of football matches in this country is clearly something that cannot happen at the time. The thoughts of everybody associated with the EFL and members clubs are currently with anybody affected by the coronavirus. All kind of sensible stuff here. Situation under constant review. I mean, they'd said that since the word go, even from the initial 3-week suspension. We're going to keep it under constant review is what they were saying the whole time. Now, here's the interesting bit. The EFL also notes and appreciates the decision taken today by the Premier League in respect of the short-term financial relief it is to provide EFL clubs through the advancement of solidarity payments, parachute payments and academy grants. So this is very interesting news. These actions will have a positive impact on individual clubs across 3 divisions at a difficult and uncertain time. So solidarity payments go to everybody from the Premier League who's not in there. They are different to parachute payments. What I am assuming, and there will be a lot of conjecture in what I'm going to say, because unless I read the agreement, then we're all kind of speculating a little bit. What we're assuming is that these payments, I know the TV payments go one at the start of the season, then one in the middle, and sometimes people ask for advances on that. I'm assuming that solidarity payments, I don't know whether they're paid quarterly, whether they've advanced the next one along, or the difficulty in me understanding this is, particularly with solidarity payments and parachute payments, is they will be different depending on where a team is next season. So, for example, you couldn't pay Fulham their next season's parachute payments. Fulham are due 2 parachute payments because you don't know where they're going to be next season. They could win the playoffs. They could get up into second place, for example, when we do resume. Therefore, they wouldn't be due a parachute payment because they'd be back in the Premier League. So it's all very confusing. And for, I don't know, take Hull or Charlton down the bottom, the solidarity payment is going to be different if Charlton are in the Championship than it is if they're in League One, for example. So Animation says, what about Huddersfield? Yeah. So Huddersfield's a bit more cut and dry, actually, because Huddersfield are not going to get promoted. So they're going to receive a year 2 parachute payment of something around 25 million, whether they're in League One or they're in the Championship. So that's a bit more of a cut and dried one. It's promotion. The solidarity payment is a different matter. So I'm very interested to see whether this is, I don't know, like a quarterly payment or a monthly payment. I don't know how they come down. I'd be interested to see how this works. What was a bit disconcerting is the Sky Sports Twitter, for example, saying the Premier League have given money to the EFL. No, they haven't. They have not. They've advanced money that would be owed to them in the future anyway. So this isn't a handout. This is it's good. I'm not criticising the Premier League. This is good, but it's not charity. Shall we have a look at the Premier League statement and see whether that tells us any more? It starts in very much the same way. Season restart will not resume at the beginning of May. The restart under constant review. So exactly the same thing. One slightly different facet of the Premier League's statement than the EFL is this consulting players segment. In the face of, this is the Premier League statement now, in the face of substantial and continuing losses for the 2019-20 season since the suspension of matches began, and to protect employment through the professional game, Premier League clubs unanimously agreed to consult their players regarding a combination of conditional reductions and deferrals amounting to 30% of total annual remuneration. Always a difficult word to say. Let me say that again. A combination of conditional reductions and deferrals amounting to 30% of total annual remuneration. Can't even say that word, Jesus Christ. So no one's going to give up more than 30% of their annual wage. It sounds like conditional and deferral reductions. It's going to be a case-by-case thing for each Premier League player. So I guess, I don't know. We don't want to pull two examples out of the air, but let's say a Premier League player is paid £50,000 per week. I assume they'll be consulted, and maybe if that player's only recently got their contract, and I don't know, they've just bought a house, they've got other business interests or whatever, they'll be consulted on all of this, and it'll be, can you defer your wages up to an amount of 30% to kind of save the club paying out tons of money whilst there is less money coming in. Remember, in all of this, a Premier League club is so different to a Championship club, in that we've heard before, a Premier League club literally could give away all of their tickets for free and still be in profit because of the sheer proportion of their income that comes from TV money. One would assume that there's some contractual obligation from the clubs to provide all of the matches that they've promised, but you would assume that as long as this season finishes in some way and the advertisers pay the broadcasters and the broadcasters play the clubs, that the Premier League is all going to be okay in respects of that massive amount of TV money that they get. You know, we're talking 100 million per season, and this is not any other type of income. Remember, you've got your match day income, your commercial revenues, and your TV income. If you're a Championship club, let's take Millwall for example, who I don't know what Millwall draw, 15,000 at the Den with a good away following as well. That's important to them. If Millwall don't have that 15,000, that's very different than, let's take Aston Villa. I know they're going to draw a bigger attendance, but the TV money covers all of it. So when we're talking about a Premier League club, it's very different than a Championship club. Let me just read on here. Solidarity of the clubs below the Premier League. Discussions also took place regarding financial relief for clubs in the short term. And while there is no single solution, measures are to be put in place to immediately deal with the impact of falling cash flow. Critically, the league unanimously voted to advance funds of 125 million to the EFL and National League, as it aware of the severe difficulties clubs throughout the football pyramid are suffering at this time. So the devil is in the detail and the definition here. Again, it's a bit of a guessing game. This is not money falling out of the sky. This is an advance of solidarity payments and parachute payments as well. Parachute payments is a real difficult one because that depends on how this season finishes. But solidarity payments, I don't know. Maybe they have advanced some of next year's. Maybe they have advanced parachute payments. I don't know. And there's an assumption, look, if the season resumes and you're promoted, you're going to pay that back. I assume there's some very complex legalese definition of all of this. But But very, very interesting stuff. One other thing we should say, supporting the NHS, this is in the Premier League, in consultation with the Department for Digital Culture and Media, the Premier League is immediately committing £20 million to support the NHS, communities, families and vulnerable groups during the COVID-19 pandemic. Obviously, we have to say 10 out of 10 for the Premier League for that. I assume it's just a donation that goes into central government and they decide how that goes. I think it probably is important for the Premier League to do something of that nature as an organisation. So that's good. I think the advancement of the solidarity payments and parachute payments, how on earth you can advance parachute payments, I still don't know, and I'm sure we'll get some ideas down in the comments. I do think that's good. Big Badger says an advance of payment surely means deferring the financial losses happening now. Yeah, Big Badger's right, I guess, and that's maybe the best we can do at the moment. Yeah, I do agree with that. Let's just talk about players, because I've read a lot of rubbish on Twitter about the obligations of football players to be deferring wages, and we've seen a lot about what I think it's Spurs, Norwich, Newcastle, correct me in the chat here if I've got that wrong, who are going to take the handout for their lower paid staff from the government. What we do need to say is that every single organisation in the country, in the world at the moment, whether you're the fish and chip shop down the road from me, the newsagent, whether you're a massive company like Tesco, or whether you are a Premier League football club, every company in the world is in a very awkward and unexpected situation where they immediately have no money coming in. So Premier League football players, I think, have got a bad rap recently. I think, yes, they're very high paid individuals. That's a different matter. I personally believe that I believe in a capitalist system whereby they're worth what they're paid, whereby if what they do for entertainment brings in £4 billion of TV revenue, then they deserve their slice of it, don't they? That's kind of basic capitalism. What we do need to understand is that players, particularly young players, let's take the example of, I don't know, let's take someone like Josh Brownhill, for example, who probably was on a nice wage, I don't know, somewhere between 8 and 15 grand a week at Bristol City, and he's gone and signed for Burnley in the January transfer window. So the likelihood is he's now earning, and I'm pulling figures out of the air, somewhere between 25 and £35,000 a week. If Josh Brownhill's just got that contract and him and his wife have said, amazing, brilliant, I've made it, I'm in the Premier League, look at this contract, we can buy a house now, darling, we're made, this is great. And he goes and drops, I don't know, 100 grand deposit on £1 million house and has a 900 grand mortgage. It's not for any of us to now say that Josh Brownhill should defer all of his wages or loads of his wages because he makes more than everybody else. Animation says same with Jared Bone. Even more so for Jared Bone, because I assume it's far more expensive to live in Stratford than it is in Burnley. I think we all know that, don't we? So it's not fair of us who probably all watching this channel earn, I don't know, between 18 and, we're all working class people. Look, let's just say we don't earn what footballers earn. But I don't think it's fair of people to just be saying footballers make a lot of money. I'm sure they've got business interests. I'm sure they go into property. And I'm sure they're not all just sitting at home and there's 30 grand a week, or I guess they get paid monthly, 120 grand a month. Remember, hack off 40% tax for that straight away. Big Badger says, absolutely right, Ben. People don't realise and don't care about that. Well, thank you for backing me up. These are human beings that all have expenses. So, for example, if I go and do a gig, and we can talk about what I make, because I'll be honest about it. If I make 250 quid on a gig, I might say to my missus, let's go out for dinner, and I'm going to spend the 250 quid. Luke says, people think footballers have thousands just lying around. Everybody lives to their means. So it's a really interesting argument, and I think every case should be, the more money you spend, the more money you earn, the more money you spend. Charles said a footballer in hospital with the virus would want a doctor or nurse. I didn't quite get the end of that comment; it just disappeared there. So look, I don't think it's as simple as saying that footballers, etc. This is not the obligation of footballers. They're not leaders. This is why we have a government and why we elect in officials. And I don't want this to all go political. It is now their responsibility to lead, and it's our responsibility as taxpayers to provide money into the economy that in times like this, those people make the decisions. So Luke says footballers earn the right amount. It's NHS staff that are underpaid. There we go. Ben, what is the name of your band? I'm wearing a Kiss jumper today. There we go. So look, lots of interesting stuff here. Obviously, it was the sensible thing for them to come out and say, we're not going to play until it's safe. Yeah, fine. That makes perfect sense. Well done to the Premier League for the first measure of we're going to bring forward the solidarity payments. This is really difficult, and there can't be this big overarching, this is what we're going to do, because we don't know whether this was going to end. I was just having a chat with my missus saying this would be so much easier if we knew COVID was going to end on July the 1st. And we have to survive until July the 1st. People can draw up budgets. Right, I'm back to work on July the 1st. I've got money coming in from there. It's not. So we're just going to have, there's going to be more stuff like this. We might get another statement in 3 weeks from the Premier League or the EFL saying, we're going to do this. So it's good that the solidarity payments have come forward. I assume that someone said in the chat, okay, it's deferring the pain. Yes, it is deferring the pain, but we don't know what the end point of all this is. So, it's a very, very weird time. Perhaps footballers don't have an obligation to defer wages, but if they can do it, I think they do have a moral obligation. That's an interesting question. Does somebody who has more money have a moral obligation to help out people who have less money? Probably they do, don't they? There's always the argument that the person who has more money has earned that more money, and the person who doesn't have more money maybe doesn't have more money because they don't deserve more money. It's a very difficult moral maze, that one. And you would like to think that if someone was very comfortably off and they had a huge slush of money, that they wouldn't let somebody else, that they've probably interacted with, especially in terms of, like we're saying in the chat here, other staff. We're talking about a Premier League player being paid an average of, 35 grand a week is the average, and probably physio probably makes 35 grand in a year. So yes, maybe there could be some kind of system to help, but it's very, very difficult, and it all needs to be done on a case by case basis. Hi, Mr. Dora in the chat. Thank you for giving me 10 out of 10 on your YouTuber ratings here. Big Rager says Leeds players have done it to pay the non-footballing stuff, and yeah, it's really interesting because that's great that Leeds have done it. That might be the right thing that Leeds are able to. Barnsley might not be able to do the same thing. Do you know what I mean? It might be that Kiko Casilla and his 30 grand a week, or Marcelo Bielsa presumably and his couple of million a year are able to do that. Maybe, I don't know, Patrick Schmidt or Mambo Diaby of Barnsley aren't able to do the same thing. It's a very, very difficult one. It all needs to be done on a sort of case-by-case basis. Definitely, like I said, 10 out of 10 for the 20 million donation to help. Mr. E says, I wonder if any agents have donated some of their money to charities. Again, this is all the trickle down, isn't it? Because you would, agents are not going to be making any money in transfers for a while. That's for sure. We assume agents will get ratcheted pay out of, maybe on a monthly or a 6 monthly basis out of players' wages. So it all trickles down. And, we have to follow this. If the advertisers don't pay, the matches don't happen. The advertisers don't pay. The TV money doesn't go to the clubs. The clubs don't pay the players. The players don't pay the agents. It's all a massive cycle, and it's all only going to restart again the second. And it is the Premier League, let's be honest. It is the Premier League that's going to drive this whole economy because it's the behemoth that it is. So With that being said, let's just talk a little bit about the solution, because as soon as we can get the Premier League going again, even if it goes ahead of the EFL, then the whole economical chat that we're having going on here starts to go again. I would not be averse to, if there's a way of all players have been quarantined and they can, I don't know how they would do it, open up a couple of stadiums. Where's the biggest stadium in the middle of nowhere? I don't know, one of the ones on the side of a motorway where no one has to go into a big city or anything. And they can literally, as Gary Neville said, a festival of football, they can literally open up the stadium and bang out 4 games for TV in a day. As soon as they can start doing that, because let's be honest, the country and the world wants some entertainment as well. That will start to get things going, and then you get that cycle of what I was saying. Right, TV's going, so advertisers are happy, advertisers pay, so Sky are happy, so the clubs are happy, so the players can get paid, the fans are happy, they're going to pay their Now TV subscriptions and their Sky subscriptions, and then the whole thing moves again, and then maybe the EFL can start underneath that. Obviously, the EFL it's very different. Imagine Leeds versus Nottingham Forest. That's just about the biggest EFL game you can get at Leeds. So you've got 40,000 in there. You've got 2 historically big clubs. That's very different to Fleetwood versus Rochdale in League One, where does anyone want to watch that? So we'll see. Big Badger says about behind closed doors, fans turning up. Yeah, that has just to be people following instructions, and that has to be policed, and it needs to be strict. And if it's policed and people are starting to turn up, they need to be arrested, and they need to be they need to be kept away. And maybe wherever they decide to do this, if it isn't a shut off Wembley Stadium, then maybe they need to just shut off all the way around Wembley Stadium. I don't know, I'm spitballing, but the games need to start for the economy to start. And it sounds stupid, but Liverpool playing, this is the butterfly flapping its wings, and Liverpool playing does help Fleetwood or whoever I've just mentioned. Poor old NHF staff, this is in the chat, will be needed to cover. That's another difficult one, isn't it, as well, because you need, a lot of the ambulances and things are there for the fans. So if there are no fans there, then that's one issue. But yes, that all needs to be happening. Jonathan says, the elderly went to war for us. We need to stay. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we need to stay at home for them, even if they do open up a football stadium and have lots of matches. So look, I think, given what's happening, and given no one has a bloody clue how long this is going to last, I think today's statements make as much sense as they can. I think the nod towards the EFL clubs from the Premier League is good. They've done what they can because they don't know what's happening. And yes, I don't know, pick any Premier League, but Everton. Yes, Everton's got a billionaire owner, and yes, Everton is expecting 100 million. But Everton is also, they all make losses to Premier League clubs. So even Premier League clubs can't survive any more than 3 or 4 months and still pay, I don't know, Yannick Bolasie 70 grand a week. It's not going to happen without that economy. So I keep making this gesture, but I'm talking about the economy just keeping going, and someone needs to spend some money and put on some entertainment for this to kind of stuff. So look, in short, I've waffled on. This is a good thing, the statements today, and it's just about all they can do. Right, are there any questions in the chat? I'll do some questions. We'll try not to speculate too much, but my view is finish the season with Sabutio, says Rob. There we go. My view is that these statements are sensible, and it's a thumbs up for the Premier League and for the EFL from me today. And my view, I know I'm going to get asked, my view is the season has to finish somehow, whether it's next summer or not sure about the pink top, Luke. Come on, this is classic American rock apparel. The season needs to finish somehow. Otherwise, we're screwed, aren't we? If we have a 39 game season that gets cancelled, everything is screwed. What do you do with next year's parachute payments? Do you pay Fulham, Huddersfield, and Cardiff 45 million all over again, despite the fact they've already spent that? Do you? And I mean, let's look at it. Who's in the bottom three of the Premier League? They are the ones that have the most to gain. Remember that trapdoor in between the Championship and the Premier League is the biggest financial vacuum in basically all of business. You go from a 7 million quid a year income to 100 million quid a year income. It is gargantuan. So, is it Norwich and Villa, whoever? If the season isn't finished, how do you think things should be set up? I just don't think it's an option. I think we need to wait until things are safe. We need to get off the peak. They need to get vaccines going. And if they can start behind closed doors, they have to start behind closed doors. And what happens if the season doesn't finish again? I just don't think it's an option. It cannot work. You can't have a competition that it's just, there's just no option given that some people have played more home games than away games. Some people have already played all of the top six and they've got a nice run in. It just cannot be voided. It cannot, in my opinion. And look, I'll be there. I'll be covering it. I'll be at the games if they do void it. But it's going to be ridiculous. It's going to be, and I mean, you've got that example in the Premier League where Aston Villa have got a game in hand, but they're in the bottom three. You can't relegate a team with a game in hand. They can win one game and they're out of it. It's absolutely insane. So my opinion is it has to finish, and even if it's just the Premier League starting first, we as people need the world to come back to normal as soon as it's safely possible. And if that means 3 games a day in a closed off, quarantined Wembley Stadium for 4 weeks, then so be it. Then that's what they do and get things going on TV. Of Barnsley, Luton and Hull and Charlton, who are most likely to go down? Well, this is another matter as well, because you talk about momentum. Hull will be quite pleased that the season stopped. But look, we have a 2-week international break and teams change and form changes just like that, doesn't it? So God knows how a 3-month break. Look, people talk about injured players. I think as football fans, we just want to see players out there. So I think it's good to see. It's all very well to say, oh, so and so was injured when we stopped, and now let's take Forshaw for Leeds, for example. Look, we just want to see players back, don't we? So everyone's got that time to hopefully rehabilitate players, but you would assume it's going to be like a whole pre-season. So you want to look at managers who set up pre-seasons well and whose teams come out of the traps, like Charlton did at the start of the season. But then again, what's that League One momentum? Bielsa's teams always go like crazy at the start of a season. I'm trying to think who else. Swansea had a brilliant start. So you've got to look at those teams possibly going to have a good run, and maybe someone like Hull on a really bad run. Maybe it's good for them. John says, agree with you, but what about the playoffs? Can we squeeze them in? The longer we go, the less squeezing stuff in becomes an issue. I think everybody understands this is not going to be done by August, and we're going to be starting the next season in August. So, look, and some people have got this World Cup thing where they say, look, finish the season by, I don't know, October, have a month off, start in December, finish ready for that World Cup that's coming up, and get the season. Whatever they need to do, I think they just absolutely need to finish it, don't they? But everyone's heard this on podcasts, and I don't want to waffle and speculate on things like that. Look, are there any more questions in here? This is brilliant. We've got loads of people in the chat, so get your questions in, and I'll stay on here. My missus is downstairs doing work for her deputy head's job, so I can stay on it for a while longer. We have to finish this season and modify next season. Yes, exactly. Let's defer what hasn't been started and finish what has been started, I think is... Luke says, typical Leeds, finally nothing can stop us going up. Leeds are going to be fine, Luke. You've got one of the best managers the Championship has ever seen, and like I've just said, they're amazing amazing at starting off a gap because of Bielsa, so I'm sure they'll be fine. Brentford are a good third for me, says Rob, Millwall fan. There you go. What if Gary Rowett can get Millwall together? And, it could be brilliant if they do it. We've got this 9-game sprint, and someone like Millwall, if Millwall can put 6 wins out of 9 in the last game, they're in the playoffs. Simon says this was Forest's year. I think Forest will still be okay because their pattern of play and strategic stuff was already good, wasn't it? Very good defensive side, Forest. So I think they should always... I mean, we said this when we were doing the reviews and whatnot, that the top 5 all looked okay, and it was only our Preston flat track bullies, our Bristol City too inconsistent. Can Millwall come and have that surge? Teams like Sheffield Wednesday have gone, can Blackburn... Blackburn could even have Bradley Dack back. They could even have their star player back by the time we get back. Something about Bilic, please, Mr. Ben, says HRV Jazz. Bilic has done great. I think Bilic has done really well in terms of the recruitment and the timing. So I personally think Leeds and West Brom should be fine. Animation said I think this could benefit my team, Oxford, who started really well. Yeah, Oxford look good, don't they? If Leeds don't go up, Bielsa will leave. Phillips and others will be sold to balance the book. I think I agree with that about Leeds. It could be the end of Leeds if they don't go up. But come on, really, this is not 2018-19 where they're up against a very good Norwich team and a very good Sheffield United team, and they're in 3rd place. I think Leeds come back. Like I said, maybe with a completely fully fit first 11 and bench, and you back Leeds over 9 games to just get the job done. And their running was good, wasn't it? So never underestimate Leeds' ability to measure. I know, but it did feel very different. And I've said this a billion times on the channel. Always look at year 2. Charles says, I am Leeds. The stoppage could prevent them going up automatically or by the playoffs. Play all 46 games if we miss out, so be it. Hello from Croatia. Rob says Steve Bull. Oh, I love Steve Bull. He knows I love to talk about Steve Bull. There we go. Only way Leeds won't go up if the season is made void. I agree, and I'm not cringing at the comment, Mr. Big Badger. I'm just cringing at the idea of voiding a 39-game league. It would just be mental, wouldn't it? Absolutely mental. Just cannot happen. I know there's more important things in the world, but that would be the craziest thing, wouldn't it? And wouldn't it be typical me as an Ipswich fan? Norwich get up, take the 100 million. They're on the verge of getting relegated. I mean, look, let's be honest, Norwich are going to be fine. They'll probably win the championship next season, even if they are relegated. And then they get another go because of a pandemic virus. That would be brutal, wouldn't it? And brutal for Leeds and West Brom, who've put in all of that good work. And then you look at the financial side of it as well. West Brom have made calculated gambles in their year 2 of parachute money. I'm sure Charlie Austin is not cheap. They spent money on Kravinovic and Zahor, didn't they? They've made a calculated gamble to do it now, so they kind of deserve. Every team deserves it to be going. Simon says, I remember when Ipswich were in the Premier Division. So do I, Simon. Long time ago. We're just coming up to the 20th anniversary of Ipswich's glorious promotion at Wembley. Big Mally says, null and void would ruin football. I think I agree with Big Mally that it would just be mental, wouldn't it? Absolutely mental. Charles says, Sky and BT will not pay out 800 million if it's voided. Totally agree. Totally agree. I blame Carol Baskin. I don't know who that is. There we go. Radio Leeds Sunday says Hardy. 1 p.m. tribute to the 2 Leeds fans who were killed in Turkey. God, was that 20 years to the day? I remember that. Leeds going to Galatasaray. Badger says, amazed how so many football fans say the league must be made void. Look, I think sensible football fans know it shouldn't be voided. We've seen some ridiculous self-interest. And let's be honest, it's in the interest of Hull. Void it now, and then they can't get dragged. It's in the interest of Norwich. Void it, let us stay up. West Ham, it was Karen Brady. They're on the edges, aren't they? Be in the interest of them. I think people have got to be sensible and take self-interested out of the way. Anthony says he's good mates with Paul Mariner. Unbelievable. What a player Paul Mariner was. boys and girls, look him up. There we go. Paul Mariner was playing today, England striker. Powerful but skillful at the same time. What a player. How much would he be worth? 40 million? 50 million? There we go. Good stuff. Anthony there in the chat. Right. Unless any more questions come in, we can wrap up. I've got another video written. Luke says, let's be honest, if Sheffield Wednesday... I'm not going to talk about Sheffield Wednesday and what Luke's just said, but what about Sheffield Wednesday and Derby in the FFP? There's all that to work out as well. They've got plenty of time to work it out. Nick says Paul was great. He's totally right. And I just missed that one about the Premier League deciding something there. What about the FFP as well? That needs to be sorted out, and those teams have been charged. Derby and Sheffield Wednesday will need to have their punishment. The 9 points, and then whatever else on top. So there's so much that needs to be sorted out. The null and void thing, just go. And I think as well, I think Premier League players were under a directive not to use those terms in interviews. So it's obvious the Premier League wants away from that, which would intimate they desperately don't want that to be happening either. Right. Any more questions? When am I on again? Don't get the chance to watch. Time difference. I don't know. We'll figure something out. Maybe I can come on live again. I have another video scripted, so I'm doing for the Blue Monday podcast actually. If you're a fan of me rather than just any particular subject, I'll be doing the watch along of the Barnsley. Did we have Barnsley chap in here as well? The Barnsley playoff final from 2000. So I'm doing that and recording that tomorrow as well. So that could be lots of fun, especially given Ipswich are going to win 4-2. Spoiler alert. Which games were you planning on attending? Oh God, there was loads, wasn't it? Literally the weekend I was at Fulham versus somebody. Who was it? Fulham and Brentford. Then I was at Ipswich and Bristol Rovers. Then I was at Brentford and West Brom. Got loads of tickets. I had Swansea Leeds tickets. There was a Leeds home game I was at. Derby Leeds. I've got tickets for all of these games. So it's going to be interesting to see how it pans out and whether with work coming back, whether I can actually make the games. I'm sure the clubs will refund all my tickets. But yeah, I had loads of good stuff. You've got to understand, as a YouTuber, this is the time when people are engaged. Leeds fans, West Brom fans, Brentford, Forest, all those teams chasing at the top. Preston, Millwall, they all want to see content on their teams at the moment. So this is where us YouTubers can kind of connect with the most people. So really, really good. Charles says, UEFA have stated if a country voids a season, they will lose places in Euro competitions. Well, so be it. I don't really know what UEFA are trying to achieve with that. I think UEFA are a bit cross that Euro 2020 has been cancelled. So, UEFA don't really have a dog in the fight. It's all down to what the Premier League decide. The Premier League's so powerful, isn't it? And you know what? The Premier League's almost more powerful than the Champions League, isn't it? Because they can kind of dictate whatever the Premier League does, everybody else follows. And that includes all of us as EFL fans. We're following the Premier League, we're waiting for them. And that is why, to come back round to the whole title of this video, that's why I'm quite impressed with what they have done. Just for my information, the Leeds fan groups simulated Leeds against Blackburn. Leeds won 3-0, there you go. Of course they did. Do you know what? I was going to be at that Blackburn game. It was difficult to do. John says, Dan at Lions TV is doing amazing content at the moment. Yeah, he always does. Lions TV, check him out. I'm sure we've got plenty of people subscribed to Dan down there doing the Millwall stuff. It was going to be an interesting one, Blackburn versus Leeds, because I think Leeds had sold 8,000 tickets in a quarter of an hour or something. And Blackburn had done a very naughty thing on their website, I think. And they were trying to sell, before they were going to sell individual tickets for that game, they were trying to make me buy tickets for all 4 games in the home stand, and before they actually released them for the single game. So I think a bit of Blackburn trying to profit on Leeds' imminent promotion. I think fans of Ipswich will remember being up against Man City on the last day of the season, and Man City taking half of Manchester across to Blackburn, and one of those ones where the away stand's got 8,000 in, but there's another 2,000 or 3,000 in all of the other stands as well. I think Blackburn tends to be a bit like that, quite low uptake on sales there often. Right, I've said goodbye about 3 times. Let's do it again. Let's do it properly this time. Follow on Twitter at Benjamin Bloom. Hit subscribe, ring the bell. Loads of stuff on the channel, loads of top 10s. And if you've watched Sunderland Till I Die on Netflix, I've done an interview with Graham from the Roker Report, formerly of the Roker Report, who appears in episode 4 with the owners, talking about the Will Grigg transfer. Watch the documentary and watch my review of that. It's really, really great. Big Badger says Blackburn put away prices up to 40 quid. Yes, they did. Yeah, a bit naughty, I think, bit naughty. Right, Michael says, bye from Australia. Bye, Michael, hope you're safe down under. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. I'll try and advertise the next stream. Thank you, Luke says, stay safe. Big Badger says, don't go. I'm going to have to go. Me and my missus, we planned the Friday. She's got a bottle of Prosecco and I've got a bottle of wine. And we are going to drink all of it. Hello, Lee says, up the blade, still loving the channel. Isn't that brilliant that you make friends with Sheffield United and Norwich and Villa fans? They go up and they keep watching. Big Badger says, bye from Australia too. Great stuff. Amazing that I'm sitting here in Bedfordshire talking to you guys in Australia. Andrew says, cheers, Ben. Have a good drink. We're going to streamline it, Andrew. We're going to take our time, little mouthful at a time, but I intend on being quite hammered later on. Stay safe also to Story 65. John, who's a great supporter of the channel, is in Chiang Mai in Thailand, a West Ham fan. Nick's great as well, an Ipswich fan. Little Crow, you're Millwall, aren't you, Little Crow? Everyone loves my drunk missus. Yeah, we're going to do a stream later. See how long she can do the Millwall Mill chant for later on. Yeah, definitely popular with Millwall fans there. Honestly, without getting gushy, you guys are all brilliant. We have people who during the season turning up like 2-3 nights a week, and we're chatting on here. Absolutely brilliant. We're all fans together. The only reason I may know a bit more than you guys is because I'm the kind of central epicenter of all this knowledge coming through the channel. It's not because I'm in any way smarter. So I do appreciate all of the input from all of the Championship fans that watch, and Premier League fans, and fans from League One as well. Absolutely brilliant stuff. So anyway, I sound like I'm doing a bloody Oscar speech, don't I? So I will shut the hell up. Follow on Twitter at Benjamin Bloom. Hit subscribe, ring the bell. We'll do another stream maybe in the evening because the numbers were good. And yes, the net result of this stream is that well done to the EFL and the Premier League for their actions today about the best can do. Andrew's taking the piss saying, our font of knowledge. I am not smarter than anybody. I do not know more than anyone. I'm a fan just like you, but I am central to all of this information flooding in, and I really do appreciate all of it. And on that note, I'm going to say goodbye, over and out. I'm going to walk downstairs and open that bottle of wine. Thank you for watching. See you all soon. Stay safe. Wash your hands. Keep 2 meters away. And maybe there'll be some football in 6 weeks or so. It's not going to happen.